moments of anxiety following the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan. And we have with us Professor Shorbojit Mukherjee, who is a professor of international relations at the Kardan University in Kabul, but he has not resigned as yet. He's been a professor there for 2 years. I'm just going to ask him questions about why have you not resigned? Why have you chosen to still be there when the takeover took place and there was a lot of fear and others resigned?
I cannot, in fact, make statement on behalf of others, stating that, well, others have resigned too. But as far as my university was concerned, we were having, in fact, our closing days of the semester, and I was supposed to, in fact, come back to my country on the 16th of August, and that's how I had made my travel plans. On 15th of August, in fact, two of my friends, two of my Indian other colleagues from the university who were teaching, in fact, in the business school, they left for their holidays, and on the 15th itself, in fact, the Taliban had entered into Kabul, and that led to, in fact, the literally, in fact, the fall of the government, or creating, a vacuum in Kabul, and which triggered, in fact, suspension of international flights from Kabul to any other, in fact, foreign destination. So we were, in fact, stuck for that matter. And immediately after that, in fact, in the following couple of days, the other expatriate, in fact, faculties at my university, they started leaving for their homes to Africa or to, in fact, the neighboring countries. And on the 21st, in fact, it really triggered me that I should also, in fact, plan my, in fact, return journey to, in fact, India. And that's how, in fact, I was with the group of 150 other Indians who were, in fact, evacuated courtesy of the Ministry of External Affairs and also of the armed forces. I must, in fact, thank them for their, in fact, quick response to such a crisis that was unfolding in that country. Yes, so that.
But you did not think of resigning, because many thought when the takeover was inevitable that one must get away from Afghanistan. Was there not any moments of fear where you felt I should go away, because you waited till the 21st?
Yes, of course, because in fact, there was no such thing of, in fact, putting up a resignation and then, in fact, leaving. It came one after another. So there's no room for you to, in fact, think that, well, I must do this and then I should, in fact, go away from the country like that. So those things didn't, in fact, come as such. So that's why, in fact, I was there till, in fact, 21st, and even to this day, there are other, in fact, some of other friends, Indian friends, who are still over there in Kabul, for that matter. They are from my university, that much I can say, and some others are working with some other banks and etc. So yes, there are, in fact, still Indian friends who are still in Kabul. They wish to also, in fact, come back to the country, at least for the time being, to see, how the things take shape, because it is a kind of a void that people are in fact, in Afghanistan. There is no government at that point of time, until and unless, in fact, there is a government and that is recognized by the international community. Well, people do not have much of, in fact, I would say, a sense of certainty or security, for that matter. So once that is done, in fact, people will obviously, in fact, think over that, whether they should be in a position to go back, or whether they should, in fact, return to their home countries permanently. Yeah.
So you're still keeping the option open of returning to Afghanistan. Is there no fear that grips you?
See, it is we are in such a kind of a trade which doesn't involve, in fact, any such outside the classroom interaction, for that matter. It's a very limited, in fact, engagement with, in fact, students at the graduate level, coming. So there's not that thing. And then secondly, when you are talking about emphasizing on fear, for that matter, I don't know, yes, everybody fears for their own, in fact, lives, which I'm no exception to it. But at no point of time, in fact, there was any incident that made me to be afraid, to become, in fact, scared. So that has not, in fact, happened at least with me or with, in fact, a couple of my friends. So I cannot, in fact, say on behalf of others. So therefore, yes. So it hasn't, in fact, come yet. But of course, what we get to hear from other news reports and the other, in fact, people for that matter, there seems that there's something, in fact, which makes people, in fact, scared. But
And you're not scared. You're not scared, and you still are with the students. Are they in touch with you?
Of course, because we are our university for the last 6 months we are doing, in fact, in an online, in fact, mode. So obviously, in fact, students are in communication with me over email, over, in fact, other social media, in fact, platforms for that matter. So obviously, I'm in touch with them. And at the moment, in fact, we are doing, in fact, grading for that matter. And as professionals, we also have, in fact, certain obligations to, to do the necessary, in fact, that has been done. So we cannot, in fact, overlook, and we cannot say that, now it's not the time for this and that, because we have taken a commitment, so we have to, in fact, stick to it. Yes.
And what really happened when the Taliban took over in Afghanistan? Where were you at the point in time, and the negotiations or meetings with the university officials? Then your safety. There were concerns, and of course there was some fear.
See, again, since you are again emphasizing on the fear factor, whatever, I must say that on the 15th, when they, in fact, literally rolled into Kabul for that matter, we were in our office. I was at my workstation for that matter. And then our VC, in fact, instructed us to, to close the office and to, in fact, go back home, or to go back to our respective, in fact, apartments, wherever we were staying. So that was the thing. And then what the nature of the negotiation or whatever the meeting, the new, in fact, this group, this Taliban had with our administration, I do not have much of knowledge. But only thing that what I witnessed was that the security of our campus was taken over by the Talib soldiers, and that's all. And since I usually, in fact, go for my morning chores, in fact, walk and this and that, so I was, in fact, crossing them, and they were quite, in fact, polite in exchanging niceties. So that is it. So that was my limited interaction with them. Yes.
And given the situation, when we see that people are in fear in Afghanistan, whether it's the Indians, whether it is other Afghan nationals there, what was the situation before? You've been there before for 2 years, and after the takeover, that you say it was not a moment of fear after the takeover. It was something which you didn't really think about. It was you as a professional in the university.
See, when I signed up for the job, obviously I signed up with the knowledge that I'm going to work in a conflict zone. So when you work in a conflict zone, there are things which are part of it, in fact, this kind of a stress and strain that you are working in a zone where violence is a norm for that matter, that sort of a thing. But again, in the last 2 years of my work, yes, we have heard of, in fact, blasts, we have heard of explosions, we have heard of, in fact, killings, etc. But luckily, it didn't, in fact, come to our, in fact, campuses. So that much I can say. Second one is that when the Taliban were taking over one after another, in fact, the provinces, what it seemed was that it seemed like, in fact, a military coup taking place in one province after another. And that was, in fact, Kabul's fall was also, in fact, pointed out as an imminent one. So it was something that we were all expecting. And in fact, the embassy from time to time were quite, I would say, effective, efficient in terms of providing out, in fact, security advisory stating that, you leave the country as soon as possible. So I had also, in fact, made my plans. My plan was to, in fact, leave the country on the 16th itself, because there was no available ticket on the 15th of August. So 16th I had, in fact, designated that I'm going to leave for, in fact, the summer break or my semester break. So that was my plan, and then on the 15th, you found like in fact they literally in fact rolling into the city with the in fact the failure of in fact the government creating in fact a void for that matter, and that void caused what it caused a panic. It caused a panic. So it is quite obvious that well, especially in a conflict zone, where there are two parties involved, and you find that well, one party literally getting in fact diluted. Obviously, in fact, the ordinary people in that, in fact, context, they would find themselves more insecure, feel more insecure. They would feel, in fact, that something unknown, in fact, I was also, in fact, in that state of mind that well, something unknown is coming. In fact, well, and that was it. Yes.
What about your family? Were they worried?
Yes, of course.
When you say that you might go back if given an opportunity, what does your family have to say?
See, to be very honest here, that well, what makes you to in fact go out of the country? It is a search of in fact employment. It is search of in fact opportunities for that matter. It is not in fact like out of free choice that somebody in fact leaves, but it is out of in fact certain compulsions. So out of compulsions, in fact, thousands and thousands of people in fact go out of India to work abroad for that matter, even to in fact places like in fact a conflict zone like in fact in Afghanistan. So it is no in fact exception. So these are the ground realities. Now coming to in fact my family, my wife was always in fact kept on the same page, and whatever was happening I used to in fact share with her. And she's a very very in fact brave and a courageous in fact woman, that much I can say. And she has been with me in fact in thick and thin in terms of in fact the ups and downs. So she never in fact lost hope or whatever, and she in fact repeatedly in fact tells me that well, if the situation improves, well, there is in fact a political stability, of course, like in fact why not in fact working again, resumption of work. Here I must say that well, at one point of time 6 months back I was in fact planning to move my family from here to in fact Kabul, because obviously in fact wherever I have worked in the past, like in fact in Bhutan, like my family was always with me. So I was also in fact planning to do the same. In the last 6 months I was looking for in fact a suitable in fact an apartment, etc. But again in fact these things came very fast. So that in fact made me to put aside this particular plan of taking my in fact family and in fact staying there. So that much I can say.
So hope is not lost, and Professor Mukherjee has not resigned from the Kardan University. He says if things stabilize, he will go back. With camera person Shyam Sundar Ghosh, Prema Rajaraman, Kolkata for India Today.